Homeless people in Los Angeles panic. Chase. Violence escalates.
It's this protest from the sky. The helicopters are directly above me. I'm sorry for the noise, but you saw tactical officers on things like Bearcat vehicles, flashbang grenades on the city streets of Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, once a symbol of dreams and golden opportunity, is unraveling under a growing nightmare. Behind the palm trees and red carpets lies a volatile homeless crisis that has spiraled out of control. What was once seen as a humanitarian issue is now a full-blown public safety emergency. Panic spreads through the city's streets as violence, fear, and desperation consume both the housed and unhoused. Encampments have become battlegrounds, and the city stands at the edge of chaos. Before we dive into this gripping reality, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel to stay informed on stories that matter. Los Angeles is once again at the center of national chaos. What began as targeted immigration raids has quickly spiraled into a full-blown urban crisis. Hundreds have taken to the streets in defiance of federal actions, and the situation has now drawn in the U.S. military. The protests are no longer isolated events. They've morphed into sustained clashes between citizens, law enforcement, and, for the first time in recent history, active-duty Marines. Why did the government feel compelled to send 700 Marines into a major American city? The trigger was a series of volatile protests following ICE raids that targeted undocumented immigrants, including many unhoused individuals. These operations didn't go unnoticed. Crowds swelled in neighborhoods like Boyle Heights and Echo Park, where both immigrant rights and housing activists have long warned of state overreach. As the arrests climbed past 500 and deportations began, tensions boiled over.
I want them to focus on the cities because the cities are where you really have what's called sanctuary cities, and that's where the people are. Biden allowed 21 million people to come into our country. Of that, vast numbers of those people were murderers, killers, people from gangs, people from jails. They emptied their jails out into the U.S.
In response to the escalating violence, the federal government mobilized Task Force 51, an unprecedented move involving Marines supporting federal agents and securing government buildings. While they are not authorized to make arrests, they have been seen detaining civilians until police arrive. One incident, involving the temporary detention of a U.S. Army veteran, has already sparked legal and ethical concerns. California Governor Gavin Newsom immediately challenged the deployment, filing a lawsuit against the federal government. He argues that the use of the Insurrection Act in this context is both unconstitutional and provocative.
Democracy is under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived.
Although a judge initially ruled in Newsom's favor, the Ninth Circuit temporarily stayed the decision, allowing the Marines to remain in place. Meanwhile, Mayor Karen Bass has adjusted curfew hours, signaling a cautious optimism that calm might return. But is it too late? On the ground, the city feels like it's holding its breath. Immigrant families are afraid to leave their homes. Protesters face increasing crackdowns. Social workers warn that vulnerable homeless individuals, especially those without legal status, are disappearing without clear records or oversight. How long can this continue before the damage becomes irreversible? This is no longer about policy differences or immigration enforcement. It's about the identity of Los Angeles itself. Will it remain a sanctuary city? Or has it become a battleground where humanitarian concerns are overruled by brute force? The answer may define the future of immigration in America. What has caused this sharp turn toward volatility? A critical shortage of basic resources is forcing individuals into desperation. Shelters are overflowing. Food banks are stretched thin. And access to mental health services remains limited or non-existent. In such conditions, conflicts become inevitable. Arguments over territory, stolen belongings, or even perceived slights often explode into violence. Encampment residents now speak of stabbings, torchings, and organized retaliation. There is no safety net here, only survival of the fittest.
My concern is just, safety for the students and for the families.
I am very alarmed when it comes to my children. Her being so close to a homeless embankment, I don't want anything to happen to her. But I think that the city needs to really get on top of it.
This climate of fear has begun spilling beyond the tents and tarps. Neighborhoods adjacent to major encampments are reporting a sharp uptick in alarming encounters. Commuters recount being followed on foot. Shopkeepers say they've had to install reinforced security measures. Children on their way to school are told to avoid certain blocks, not because of traffic, but because of unpredictable individuals wandering nearby in states of distress or psychosis. What happens when untreated mental illness meets absolute despair? The result is chaos and often tragedy. Public transportation has become another hotspot. Riders describe scenes of passengers being threatened, cornered, or screamed at by individuals in mental crisis. Metro staff are overwhelmed, and many routes now feel unsafe, especially after dark. Parks, once centers of community life, now see fewer families and more tents. Trails and benches are no longer guaranteed safe spaces. They are battlegrounds between the need to rest and the need to run. What makes this panic so uniquely dangerous is its unpredictability. There is no warning before an episode unfolds. No sirens. No systems in place to de-escalate. Both housed and unhoused residents are suffering, trapped in a city that appears unable to respond quickly enough. In Los Angeles today, fear walks beside everyone, from those clinging to shelter to those simply walking home. And the worst part? No one knows when or where it will erupt next. If you believe the public needs to see this reality, like and share this video. It could be the wake-up call we all need. The violence connected to Los Angeles's homeless crisis is no longer just a statistic. It's a daily threat. According to LAPD records and growing numbers of eyewitness testimonies, violent incidents involving unhoused individuals have spiked at an alarming rate. In 2023 alone, the city saw a more than 35% increase in aggravated assaults linked to homelessness. These aren't just minor altercations. They are vicious and often unpredictable, unfolding in broad daylight and crowded public spaces. Why is this happening now, and with such intensity? The answer lies in the escalating pressure faced by those living without a stable shelter. Encampments have become volatile zones, where disputes over limited space, stolen possessions, or survival resources frequently turn deadly. Police reports detail everything from physical beatings to fires intentionally set over territorial disputes. There is little room for negotiation in these high-stress environments, and even less for intervention. One incident that stunned Los Angeles involved a violent chase through Echo Park. Two men, armed with machetes, pursued another over what was later confirmed to be a disagreement about tent placement, in a city where disputes once involved silent suffering. Such open violence is now frighteningly common. Another case went viral after a woman was shoved into traffic by a man suffering an apparent psychotic break. Though she survived, the terror of the random act left a deep scar on the community and reignited concerns about untreated mental illness among the homeless population. What these events reveal is more than a series of individual tragedies. They reflect a society stretched to its breaking point. Los Angeles is now facing the consequences of long-term policy failures, including the defunding of mental health institutions, inadequate access to addiction treatment, and a complete lack of safe transitional housing. Left untreated, trauma and psychosis become dangerous not only to those experiencing them, but to the entire city.
There are patients that suffer from very serious medical illnesses. There are patients that have schizophrenia, have HIV. So I think there's urgency from everyone to solve it.
Residents and first responders alike are overwhelmed. Emergency rooms report spikes in violent injuries connected to street altercations. Police officers, often ill-equipped to handle psychiatric crises, are being forced into roles that blur the line between law enforcement and social work. What happens when survival itself becomes a trigger for violence? Without urgent intervention and real structural change, the city may soon face not just a homelessness crisis, but an uncontrollable spiral of fear, injury, and retaliation. The clock is ticking, and Los Angeles cannot afford to look away. To grasp the depth of Los Angeles's spiraling homeless crisis, we must look beyond surface-level explanations. This is not simply a story of poverty. It's the outcome of decades of failed policy, structural neglect, and political inertia. The chaos unfolding today was seeded long ago by systemic decisions that prioritized aesthetics and growth over human stability. At the heart of the issue is the cost of housing. The average rent for a modest two-bedroom apartment in Los Angeles has soared to $2,570 per month, far above the national average. Meanwhile, wages for working-class residents have remained largely stagnant. Inflation has only intensified the squeeze, making necessities like food, transportation, and healthcare even less affordable. What happens when a full-time job no longer guarantees a roof overhead? For thousands, the answer is homelessness, and with it, a descent into danger, instability, and often, despair. Yet the problem goes deeper. Economic strain alone does not explain the escalating violence and visible breakdown on LA's streets. A massive contributor is the collapse of the mental health system. Decades ago, California initiated a wave of deinstitutionalization, emptying psychiatric hospitals with the promise of robust community-based treatment that never fully materialized. Today, those broken promises echo in the streets, where over 1/3 of the unhoused population is believed to suffer from severe mental illness. What are the consequences when those in need of care are left to navigate trauma without support? They often turn to drugs like fentanyl and meth, cheap, accessible, and dangerously addictive. These substances, frequently used as coping mechanisms, intensify existing conditions such as PTSD, schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder. The result is a combustible mix of psychosis, addiction, and unrelenting stress, all unfolding in public view. Meanwhile, the city continues to treat symptoms rather than causes. Sweeps clear encampments but does nothing to address why people are there in the first place. Shelters are full. Detox programs have long waiting lists, and access to consistent psychiatric care remains limited. The result is a revolving door between the streets, jails, and emergency rooms. Why does a city with such wealth tolerate this level of suffering? The truth is, Los Angeles isn't just facing a housing crisis. It's enduring the collapse of a social contract. Until policy shifts from containment to comprehensive care, the streets will remain dangerous, and the crisis will only grow darker. As homelessness in Los Angeles becomes increasingly visible and unpredictable, public sentiment has taken a sharp turn. What was once viewed through a lens of compassion is now seen as a growing threat. For many residents, especially in more affluent areas such as Venice Beach, Silver Lake, and Echo Park, the crisis feels less like a distant tragedy and more like an immediate risk. Fear is replacing sympathy, and with it comes a new wave of reactionary demands. Why is this shift happening so quickly? It's not just the scale of homelessness, it's the perceived danger. Viral videos of random attacks, stolen property, and erratic behavior flood social media platforms daily. These clips are no longer shared to raise awareness or call for reform. They're posted as evidence of a city in decline. Neighborhood forums light up with warnings and surveillance footage. The message is clear. People are scared. In response, some communities have turned inward. Vigilante patrols have started appearing in various neighborhoods, with armed residents monitoring their streets at night. Shop owners now sleep behind their counters, some with bats or tasers at their sides. This isn't just about protecting property, it's about survival. When trust in government protection fades, fear breeds self-defense. City officials, under mounting pressure, have rolled out controversial solutions. Mayor Karen Bass's Inside Safe initiative, designed to offer temporary hotel placements to unhoused individuals, has shown mixed results. While it has removed some people from the streets, critics argue the program lacks clear pathways to permanent housing, mental health care, or employment. Without long-term planning, these hotels become revolving doors rather than stepping stones. At the same time, law enforcement crackdowns on major encampments have surged. The LAPD, under direction from city leaders, has conducted numerous sweeps, dismantling tent communities and pushing residents into new, often more hidden locations. However, these actions have sparked intense debate. Advocates argue that they displace vulnerable people without offering meaningful alternatives. Police officials counter that they're responding to rising crime and public outcry. What results is a growing tension between civil rights and public safety. On one side, communities demand order. On the other hand, activists warn of dehumanization and systemic neglect. Caught in the middle are the unhoused, shuffled, criminalized, and silenced. As fear hardens into policy, Los Angeles must ask, Are we solving the crisis or simply hiding it? To truly grasp the gravity of Los Angeles's homelessness crisis, one must look beyond numbers and policies and listen to those surviving in its shadows. Their stories reveal not only the depth of human suffering, but also the raw violence and trauma that now define life on the margins. For many, each day is a battle not for comfort, but for survival. On Skid Row, a place synonymous with hardship, Andre lives by a code forged from necessity. Once a full-time construction worker with steady pay and a family, he now sleeps lightly beneath a tarp, blade in hand. "It's like prison rules out here," he says. "You mess up, you might not wake up." Violence isn't the exception. It's the routine. Arguments over food or stolen shoes can escalate quickly, often ending in bloodshed. Trust is rare, and even kindness can be dangerous if mistaken for weakness. Elsewhere, in the Westlake district, Maria parks her car in a grocery store lot every night. With her 2 children in the back seat, she listens to the world unravel outside. Gunfire cracks the silence 3 to 4 nights a week. Sirens are constant, but police rarely respond to her calls. "They don't come," she murmurs. Her children have grown used to sleeping in clothes, ready to run if needed. What kind of childhood is forged in fear? In Hollywood, the chaos takes a different shape. Residents describe scenes that feel surreal. People bolting down the sidewalk, yelling at unseen enemies, or fleeing imagined threats. The mental health crisis plays out in public, unfiltered and untreated. One business owner compares it to a dystopian film. "It's like a movie you can't pause," he says. But for those living it, there's no script, no director, and no way out. Why have these stories become so common? The answer lies in desperation, a kind that strips away dignity and erodes humanity. When people are pushed to the brink, when every day is a gamble, violence becomes a language. It's how territory is defended, how threats are answered, how needs are met when systems fail. These testimonies are not rare exceptions. They are echoes of a city under siege from within. Los Angeles is not just facing a housing problem. It's living through a humanitarian disaster in plain sight, told one heartbreaking story at a time. Among the most heartbreaking consequences of Los Angeles's escalating homelessness crisis is the silent suffering of its youngest victims. Thousands of children across the city are now growing up without the most basic foundations of stability. They don't just lack homes, they lack safety, consistency, and hope. In a city that markets itself as a haven for dreams, these children are living a harsh, overlooked reality shaped by sirens, fear, and constant disruption. What does childhood look like in this environment? For many, it means nights spent in cars, motels, or makeshift shelters under overpasses. It means waking up hungry, washing in public restrooms, and heading to school wearing the same clothes for days. Teachers across Los Angeles report students arriving unfocused, exhausted, and visibly anxious. Some haven't eaten since their last school lunch. Others fall asleep at their desks. Educators try to help, but schools are overwhelmed and often unequipped to handle the deeper traumas at play. Social workers, already stretched thin, face impossible caseloads. With limited staffing and resources, many children slip through the cracks, receiving only sporadic assistance. Emergency shelters for families are at capacity. Long-term housing programs have waiting lists that stretch for months, if not years. As a result, children remain stuck in unstable environments where violence, addiction, and neglect are daily risks. How can they learn, grow, or dream in such conditions? The long-term consequences are devastating. Studies consistently show that homeless children are far more likely to suffer from mental health issues, drop out of school, and face incarceration as adults. They are at increased risk of substance abuse, chronic illness, and continued poverty. Without meaningful intervention, today's homeless youth will become tomorrow's unhoused adults, perpetuating a generational cycle of despair. This isn't just a moral failure, it's a societal crisis with long-reaching implications. If Los Angeles cannot protect its most vulnerable, what does that say about the strength of its social safety nets? What kind of future is being shaped when a child's first memories are of hunger and fear, rather than care and opportunity? Breaking this cycle requires more than temporary aid. It demands structural change, affordable housing, robust family support services, and trauma-informed education systems. Without it, the city's youngest residents will continue to inherit a broken reality, and Los Angeles will pay the price for generations to come. Reversing Los Angeles's dangerous spiral into instability demands more than reactive measures. It requires bold, structural reform. The city can no longer afford to treat homelessness as an isolated emergency or a criminal matter. Instead, it must confront the interconnected systems that have allowed this crisis to flourish. Mental health care, affordable housing, income inequality, and access to essential services. Without addressing these root causes, panic will continue to spread, and violence will remain the byproduct of neglect. So, where should efforts begin? Mental health must be front and center. Far too many unhoused individuals suffer from untreated psychiatric conditions, often worsened by trauma and drug use. Deploying trained mental health professionals into encampments alongside crisis intervention teams can help stabilize those in immediate distress. These teams should be equipped not only to de-escalate, but to offer on-the-spot care and pathways into long-term treatment. Substance abuse also requires a public health response, not criminalization. The introduction of safe injection sites, medically supervised detox centers, and sober shelters can reduce harm and prevent overdoses. Coupled with trauma-informed therapy, these services offer a humane alternative to punitive crackdowns and jail time. Yet stabilization alone isn't enough. Housing remains the cornerstone of any sustainable solution. Rather than relying on short-term hotel placements, Los Angeles must invest in transitional housing programs that provide more than a bed. These facilities should include job training, counseling, legal support, and educational assistance. The goal is not simply to shelter people. It's to rebuild lives. However, even the best programs will fail if wages remain stagnant and rents continue to skyrocket. Broader economic reforms are essential. Raising the minimum wage, expanding renter protections, and incentivizing the construction of truly affordable units will ease pressure on working families and reduce the flow of new people into homelessness. What happens if the city fails to act? If enforcement continues to take priority over empowerment, the consequences will be severe. Not only will violence escalate, but public trust will erode. Services will be overwhelmed, and entire communities may fracture under the weight of fear and frustration. In this pivotal moment, Los Angeles stands at a crossroads. Will it lean into panic sweeps, arrests, displacement, or choose progress through compassion, coordination, and systemic change? The answer will define not just the future of the unhoused, but the soul of the city itself. Los Angeles is teetering between two futures, one of compassion and one of control. The sirens, the barricades, the silent suffering of its most vulnerable residents are no longer background noise. They are the alarm. Without immediate, unified action, this city risks becoming unrecognizable. But if leaders choose courage over fear, and if communities demand justice over silence, there is still hope to reclaim what's been lost. If you believe these stories must be heard, don't stay silent. Subscribe and share this video to help expose the truth.